another fun thing happened while I was being all broke and stuff like that. So I got the idea of like, well, maybe, you know, I should sell some drone stuff and get a little bit of cash. So it occurred to me to sell one of my naked GoPros. And that brings me to these guys here, the topic of naked GoPros and mini quads. So I've got two little micro quads. Both have naked GoPros, and both of them are custom naked GoPros. Now, this guy is kind of a DIY build by the dude who designed the PachRay frame. So this is entirely his design for the case, and it's also entirely his design for the electronics that go inside. And then there is this monster here, which is the infamous Cinestar naked GoPro. So I decided, you know, well, maybe I'll sell the Cinestar because it's kind of, people know about it. It's usually expensive, but I thought, nah, I haven't used it that much. It's kind of my backup. This is the guy I use in bandos more often, and this is the dude I use for a backup, just so I know that I'll always have a naked GoPro for these little quads. So I figured, oh, I'll try selling this guy. So I put it up for sale on the local forum, and immediately, like, I wasn't selling it for a lot of money. I was selling it for maybe the equivalent of like 300 bucks US, right? And I put it up, and immediately some dude shit posted on my post, because it turns out he's a guy who builds naked GoPros, and he's using like the Nameless RC or the URAV stuff, and he basically shit posted on top of my post by posting a picture of, you know, a big row of camera naked GoPros he's building, because he's a guy who builds naked GoPros for people, I guess. And basically says, yeah, that mine is a big ripoff, and you know, his are better for the same price and they're brand new. And I was like, bah, bah, bah. So I actually had a buyer who was interested in this, and yeah, no offers for buying the naked GoPros. I don't know if it's because that guy shot on my post or what, but then that kind of pissed me off, right? I did decide in the end not to sell this guy because, you know, I worked something else out, and I really didn't want to sell it anyways. It's a damn nice GoPro. But the fact that that guy posted up some naked GoPros and claimed that his are just as good or better for cheaper kind of got my goat, because he's wrong, and I wanted to set the record straight. So now I'm gonna nerd out on what's up with naked GoPros and what's not, and this is gonna maybe piss some people off. I don't know. I don't really care though. I worked with the guy who designed the PachRay frame, and I kind of pressured him, right, pretty hardcore. We knew we wanted a naked GoPro on it, but at that time it was all about the GoPro Hero 6 and real steady and yada yada, and I kept pushing him to like, dude, do a Hero 8, do a Hero 8, do a Hero 8. And eventually the Nameless RC boards came out for the Hero 8, and the Beta FPV backboards also came out for the Hero 8. So I thought, awesome, now we have the backboard, we're gonna slap it on, put it in a case, and it's gonna be awesome. And it was cool for about, you know, until we crashed and then started destroying those cameras. So to be fair, the way I'm flying naked GoPros is not the same as a lot of guys are going to fly them. Most guys are going to get a naked GoPro and put it on a little Cine Whoop, and they're going to fly all the things and all that. You know, for that kind of flying, probably any naked GoPro will do pretty well, because you're not really crashing and stuff. But long story short, we found out when testing the PachRay that those Beta FPV and Nameless RC boards are not very crash friendly at all. They are fragile, man. They already had a bunch of unreliability issues where they would just stop recording, or the GoPro just wouldn't turn on and stuff like that. That drove us bonkers. Actually, it drove Pavel bonkers, because I would fly these things, then, oh no, dude, my GoPro's not working. And so he did like a bunch of different designs of the case. He built different kinds of boards. We tried all sorts of stuff where we tried, like, you know, sort of gluing the board to the, like the backboard to the main GoPro board so that it wouldn't come loose and crashes. But they still had issues with, like, you know, they would just stop recording randomly and they would fail ultimately. Ultimately, they would always fail after a certain amount of flights or crashes or whatever. They would always just give up. So during that whole process we ended up basically developing our own naked GoPro, is what I'm trying to say. The idea is that we wanted a quad that can freestyle like a 5-inch and get that same quality of footage, but it's not a 5-inch, which is why we developed this beast of a naked GoPro. So his design is exquisite, and you can't really see a lot from this angle, but what you can probably see is there's some stuff in here. And essentially we just do not use any backboard whatsoever because they suck. They just don't work for us. What does work is the setup we found here, which I am not going to open this up now, but it's basically using the GoPro regular battery pack that comes inside the GoPro battery and a 4.2 volt regulator. And the idea is to fool the camera into thinking that it is running a LiPo and not running on USB power. It's way more stable. It is not going to fire the GoPro board, and it's mounted way more securely here as well. So it's direct soldered where it needs to be, and it's also cushioned, and there is stuff in there and this and that. Plus the GoPro board itself has a little TPU thing that goes around the circumference of it. And long story short, this thing is very well designed. And it's, when I say that, it's not like me talking up my ass. What I'm saying is that I have flown this thing in a lot of hairy bandos, and it's taken a ton of hits. Like, it's got scratches and stuff on it. It's tough as shit, man. So it is leagues above those regular, like, beta FPV cased, you know, like the standard builds, man. They just do not compare. So then I get to this guy, because I'm pretty proud of how this thing turned out. It's actually fully voice operated at the moment, but we're going to add a button back onto it at some point. But that was like months and months and months of development and a lot of packs. You're talking like my flying, his flying. Getting this thing to the working reliably to the point we wanted it to work was a real trick. But now it is super reliable, always records, never just randomly stops recording. So moving on from this guy to this guy. Now, I'll give you guys a quick tour of this camera and why it is obviously better than those, shall we say, beta FPV, whatever FPV. Look, step one, look at the thickness of the carbon plate on that. That is a properly thick piece of carbon that is strong where it needs to be, and it has ventilation where it needs it. It's got a heat sink on the front of it, because guess what? Naked GoPros overheat if they do not have airflow. So this guy relies on airflow to not overheat, and it kind of works. But this guy can run on a bench for like infinity and it will not overheat. Every other naked GoPro you see, I test it yourself, don't take my word for it, but hook it up on a bench, hit record, and the construction alone on this thing is on a whole other level than those other cameras, like giant carbon. And then it's got a TPU thing here. So it's got toughness, then flexibility, then it's got a PLA case at the back. The button here is really well designed. And then moving around to the back, the connector is well designed as well. So there's no weird strain or anything like that. We actually do not recommend using these little tiny connectors. We suggest using thicker, beefier connectors, because these little ones that people tend to use that are from the FPV camera control boards, I think, they're really weak. You can just pull it apart with your fingers, like the wires rip off it. So we tend to run these bigger connectors on our naked GoPro quads. This thing is basically a tank, and it is super reliable, and it is also not using a backboard. It is using its own back solution, which again is trying to mimic a battery, and it's using proper regulators and all that good kind of stuff. It is not using the off-the-shelf backboard components. It is solid as a rock. It has never ever let me down in terms of like recording stoppages or anything like that. Haven't flown it hardcore yet, but I have flown it for a long time though. So endurance wise, it just never stops recording, ever, all the time. Because generally it's this guy that's taking the beating. And again, this guy just doesn't quit. It'll record as long as your quad is powered up. Simple as that, no matter what you do. We've crashed these things into buildings. It has fallen multiple floors onto the ground. Still works, no problem, reliable. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. People are free to disagree. I don't mind. you know, do whatever you want, buy whatever you want. I'm just saying from first-hand experience flying these little quads that we basically found out that those little beta FPV kit cams and the Nameless RC kit cams, they're basically fragile. The case is not that, you know, the case is not that strong for one, but the electronics set up in both of those boards is just not ideal either. The design is also not that great because both of those boards just sort of plug into the back of your GoPro board and they will come loose. They also pump out like 5 volts, which is too much for the GoPro main board. You can get away with that for a while, but eventually, in my experience, which goes over hundreds of packs, it's not going to end well. You'll be fine for like light cine whooping and all that kind of stuff, but there's a reason I fly these things. I paid a lot of money for this one too, so I'm kind of glad I didn't sell it. But I want to be super clear that these things are on a whole other level, and this is the proper way to build a GoPro. Do not use those stupid backboards. Use regulators, use proper regulators, and wire the thing properly. There's going to be info on that somewhere on the Naked GoPro group. And I should also point out that's not just my opinion though. I've been all over the Naked GoPro forums and I've seen other pro pilots complaining about the exact same thing, that their Naked GoPros are not reliable and this and that, and their issue is that they're doing commercial shoots, so they need something that works every time, gets the footage, no issues. And they're also saying the same thing, like none of the pro guys are using the stupid backboard things, and there's a reason for that. So yes, you can get a, you know, Naked GoPro made by some dude where he's basically gonna build that kit for you and handle the whole tearing apart of the GoPro, and you know, good on you, whatever, it'll work for a while. I just wouldn't rely on that working for too long, especially if you're going to be, you know, freestyling or whatever. And if you're going to do commercial shoots as well, I wouldn't recommend going that whole third-party backboard thing because it's just not reliable, man. You need to get the shot, and you need something that is going to record no matter what. And that's all I have to say about that. It kind of got me worked up. I hate when people shitpost on my threads, and the guy probably thinks I'm a jackass, and that's fine. If you think I'm a jackass, that's fine as well. Because you know what? I actually ordered some of those extra URAV cases and boards, and they arrived 4 months later or 5 months later or something, and by the time those arrived, I just chucked them away because that's what I think of them basically. If they were that good, I would use them. I am in no position to like spend excess money on Naked GoPros and stuff. I just want something that works. And yeah, when those things came in, I was like, whoop, gone. When I moved house, they went straight in the trash, brand new. And that's that. If they were that good, I would fly them instead of going through the hassle of developing, you know, or co-developing, because I didn't build the thing, but we wouldn't have gone through the whole hassle if those solutions had worked for us. And that's it. That's all I gotta say. Now it's probably time to start flying. Here, before I take off, I might as well chuck in a word about why I like Naked GoPro 8s specifically, and the answer to that is super simple. It's the Hypersmooth. The Hypersmooth on the GoPro 8s is kick-ass. It's not too much and not too little. So I never use Real Steady because I just don't like the look of Real Steady. To me, it looks fake and weird. What I like about the Hypersmooth here is it's got just enough stabilization to kind of remove the wobbles and stuff that these smaller quads have, and prop wash and things like that. But at the same time, it gives you footage that looks kind of natural. So you can, at least when I watch it, the footage that comes out isn't over boosted. It looks natural and organic, and you know, when I do things imperfectly, it still shows up. So it's just enough stabilization to allow you to get nice looking footage out of a tiny quad. Whereas with the Hero 6, that ain't gonna happen. Like, you might get great footage in an ideal situation, but eventually, you know, you're gonna get shakes and wobbles and it's gonna look all crappy and weird. Whereas with the 8, you can grab some pretty sweet looking footage. to the point where you won't even know if the quad's a 5-inch or not, running a full GoPro. And that's all I really want. Beyond that, I don't care. And that's just my requirements, right? You might want to run real steady, and in that case, yeah, use a 6, cheaper. Or use an 8 and run real steady with the Hero 8, no problem. You still have the option. For me, I'm too lazy. I like the standard stabilization in the 8. It's good enough for me. And it just lets me fly and get video. Keeps life simple. Cinestar there took a good hit, as evidenced by the red paint on the side there, which is what happens when you hit those beams and bounce off the floor. He's still powered up though. The question is it still going to record? Looks like it will. How about that? I didn't plan on crashing it actually, but I did. So unbent my props, still going. Don't know though, does it work? I mean, it's just a naked GoPro. Well, lo and behold, let that be a bit of a lesson to people who are gonna jump up and claim certain things are the same as other things. Specifically, all naked GoPros are not the same. They are not all created equal. Some are better than others. If you think I'm wrong, prove it. Let's see your crash footage and your GoPro surviving something like 2-meter drops from you know, iron beams onto concrete and still working no problem. I think this crash footage probably proves that. If it doesn't, you know, you're welcome to come and try it yourself. I'll give you the GPS location. You can crash your hearts out, no problem. But I think the footage speaks for itself. And look, before you go around claiming that something is the same as this or this and that, before you start making claims, know what you're talking about, for God's sake. And no hard feelings, right? I'm just trying to set the record straight, that's all. But yeah, just spread accurate information, not nonsense, you know, that would be great. I don't care who you are. I don't care how famous you are or how famous you think you are or like whatever. I don't care, dude. There's no excuse. Get your facts straight, then post up. Or maybe not post. It would be a great help. Now, I'm probably not gonna sell the Cinestar after all the beating I just gave it, but why would I? Because it's a tank, just like I said. And on that bombshell, I have to pee.